So we're back again with a new episode of Gormley Talks with Mike Gormely and myself, Susan Short, to talk about some really interesting things in the music industry that you may not have heard, you may not know about, because they are proprietary stories just from Mike Gormely, who's been in the industry for several decades, more than several. We won't have to say how many, but we'll just say decades, for decades.
Right. Okay, we'll go with
the
that.
transformation of the industry. So you worked extensively with your career with Oingo Boingo, correct? Oingo Boingo was a household name for a long time, and some of the people in Oingo Boingo you continue to work with, but one in particular went off to do some very interesting things, named Danny Elfman. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Oingo Boingo? Since you're the expert, I'm not the expert.
You say it was a household name, and it wasn't a household name outside of the West Coast.
Okay.
Let's say Denver West.
Okay.
Denver East, people kind of heard of them, but they didn't have much of an impact, because it's a long story as to why that was the case. But out here in California, where I am at the moment, it's they would sell out. There was a Universal Amphitheater held 6,200 people. We'd sell out 5 nights in a row, and it would sell out in 20 minutes. 5 nights.
Incredible.
And a lot of places like that. San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Denver, San Diego. I mean, a lot of areas like that were huge. And then, funny enough, like, we had a top 10 record in Australia. We had a number 1 record in Brazil. We played in Brazil and played to 37,000 people.
Wow.
I mean, it was, it was an interesting career, but it wasn't. Now they've got maybe because of Danny, they've got more of a name and more respect in an international basis. I mean, out here now, just the other day, I was pressing buttons on a radio and came across an oldie station, and there was Oingo Boingo playing.
Wow.
They played alongside Elvis and the Rolling Stones and so on and so forth. So a very
Impressive.
big band in certain parts of the world.
Definitely. And they were what was their real name? The something Knights of the Oingo Boingo?
Before they were Oingo Boingo, they were called the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo.
Okay.
And the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo was really a theater group, street theater. And then eventually they went into, I believe it was either the Whiskey or the Roxy. I wasn't here yet, but either the Whiskey or the Roxy on Sunset Strip in LA. And they'd have to I'm told, kind of rebuild the club to fit the Oingo Boingo show.
Wow.
And it was put together by Danny Elfman's older brother, Rick Elfman, who was a film director and more from the theater. So It was a theater troupe. Yeah. Danny was like the musical director, and then he kind of became the star of the whole thing. And I worked with them for almost 15 years as manager, and we had some great ups and downs, and it was a great band, and it was a band that was so full of energy that you would not, they'd come on stage, the crowd would get on its feet, and the crowd never sat down for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
I mean, it was just energy going. Beautiful, beautiful music, beautiful arrangements, great people for the most part.
Yeah.
And, but I couldn't, we were talking about getting Oingo Boingo to be heard, New York or Atlanta or whatever the case might be, or Florida. The show was so great that it sold the band, and they would play live, and that's where they would have great success. But there was also an 8-piece band, and I think it eventually grew to a 12-piece band at times. And it was technically needed a lot of, they used computers and all kinds of stuff like that. And It made it very difficult to tour.
Oh.
And where they could tour, they'd do well. But they couldn't get to New York very often, for example, but they did a few times, but they couldn't get there very often and build up that audience like they were able to do out here. And plus, radio stations in New York and Atlanta and some of the other stations were not yet playing the kind of music that Oingo Boingo played. So it was not. It just didn't spread the word. So I'm trying to find a way to spread the word. And there was this opportunity I got. There was this movie called Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Right. Pee-wee is from Sarasota. Paul Rubens is actually from Sarasota. I think his parents live here. Yeah.
Well, that's Pee-wee's Big Adventure was his first movie. Uh-huh. It was also Tim Burton's first movie.
Okay.
And turned out to be Danny Elfman's first movie. And I arranged a meeting. Pee-wee, Paul, was a big Oingo Boingo fan.
Okay.
And so was Tim Burton, which gives you some idea of what their fans were like.
Gotcha.
So we got a meeting. Danny and I went over to Warner Brothers on a Friday evening, and we met, and there was in the room was Paul Rubens, Pee-wee, who wasn't really a star yet, and Tim Burton, who had not made a movie at that point.
Really?
Made a little one for, I think, Disney or something. He had been an animator at Disney.
Okay.
So we met with them, and Danny got the job that Friday night. And then he called me on Saturday at home, and he said, "Look, you got to get me out of this. I don't know how to score a movie." He had scored a movie for his brother called Forbidden Zone, which is kind of legendary, but he didn't feel confident enough to score a big time Warner Brothers movie. So I just said, "Well, look, it's Saturday. Just let's not panic. Let me call him on Monday and just get more of the lay of the land," because I didn't know about movies. I was in the music world. He was in the music world. Mm-hmm. So I called on Monday, and I found out that we could hire an orchestrator that would help Danny, and that orchestrator was Steve Bartek, who was the musical director for Oingo Boingo, and so they worked together very, very well.
So he felt comfortable.
Yeah, and then we found out about a thing called a music editor that neither one of us knew about. That's commonplace in film, and happened to be a really good music editor on this film. And so Danny was comfortable enough. Let's give it a shot. And then he wrote this brilliant score. The score to Pee-wee's Great Adventure just still floors me to this day.
Wow.
It's different. I think it's different than anything else that had ever been done. It fit the movie, but he connected, and Danny went on to score every single Tim Burton movie ever made, except for one of them, and I can't remember which one that was, but they'd had a little falling out, so Danny didn't do that movie. But Danny did all the Batman. And Danny's now, I believe, one of the top 5 composers in the world.
Wow.
A couple of summers ago, Oingo Boingo hadn't played since 1995.
Okay.
They did their last concert, and out here is Halloween. Out here was Oingo Boingo night. If you were a Boingo fan, that's where you wanted to spend Halloween and Danny loved Halloween. To him, it was like Christmas. He loved Halloween, so it all fit. And so in Halloween 1995, I think was the last time they performed live as a band together as the original band. And then I guess a couple of summers ago, he played the Hollywood Bowl, sold out the Hollywood Bowl, and 18,000 people. Wow. So it gives you an indication of his power. And so he's an extremely successful composer, and it comes from that Friday night meeting that neither one of us knew much about.
That's amazing. That's a great story. That's really incredible.
It's great.
That went down in history. So what year was
it didn't blunder into, it was somewhat planned, but I didn't realize
that it would turn it snowballed, right?